9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everybody. This is your host, Huge Pop. Next to me is the figure guy, Bill. Tonight on Huge Pop Entertainment, this is Drop the Mic Night with our guest. He get ready to rock the house tonight. Our guest is a true giant in square circle. He's a former WWE Tag Team Champion, a BAD enforcer, an absolute powerhouse, the man, the myth, the bull size and power. He stands tall and hits like a freight train. He wreaked havoc on the Attitude Era alongside the best in the business. He is here to drop unfiltered truth about the locker room, the road, and the roaring crowds. Except to hear hails from the peak of Monday Night Raw. Get his real view on the modern wrestling today. Our guest brings the same fire on the mic as he brought in the ring. We will talk wrestling. We will discuss locker rooms, road trips, and ups and downs. And we will talk about his career in law enforcement as well as touch on how proud of a dad he is to have a son in the NXT. But put your hands together and welcome to our show, the one, the only, Bull Buchanan. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. How are you? How you guys?
Doing wonderful. Dude, I asked this question to everybody that's a guest on the show. It's probably this. They're like, yep, let's hear it. What was Bull Buchanan like as a child or a kid growing up around wrestling? Did you watch it? Did you like it? Hate it? What was it like as Bull Buchanan back in the day?
Oh, I loved it. Believe it or not, I was always a big kid, but sometimes it takes you a little while to grow into your size, I guess. So, I took a little bit of a hard time in school, and pro wrestling was if I could just make it, if I could get to Friday, then Saturday was there, and the Georgia Championship Wrestling was be on, and it might be a week where my dad could take me to the show in Carrollton, Georgia. So I lived for it. A lot of times, when you ain't having a great day as a kid, I had that to look forward to. But, man, it was like there was nothing. I watched all the sports. I watched baseball on TV. I grew up in the 70s. So I watched baseball. I watched football, basketball. I watched everything. But there was nothing like pro wrestling. The guys would get on there and call each other egg-sucking dogs and yellow belly and stuff like that. And they had me hook, line, and sinker. I fell in love with it. My first, living in Bowden, Georgia, the only thing I could pick up at the time, and sometimes I couldn't even hardly pick that up, was Georgia Championship Wrestling. So I grew up on Tommy Rich and Wrestling 2 and guys like that, the Freebirds, and, all those Tony Atlas, all those guys. And then once I found that, I would go to the supermarket, go with my parents, and I figured out that they had magazines. And through the magazines, I figured out that there was more wrestling than just in Georgia. And, it was everywhere in the country and overseas. So I started following the other places. And, as the 80s rolled around, technology got a little, we would literally have to go up on the roof and turn the antenna sometimes so we could see the show. But as the 80s came, technology improved. And then I was able to get WWF from I think it was Secaucus, New York, one of the stations out. But it was WWF. I could see that, and then I could see Memphis. We got a station with Memphis on it, and then we got one with World Class, and so it just snowballed from there. And then I figured out, that this is going on all over the place. And like I said, I was a big kid. I was in high school. I was 6'6". I was 220 pounds. I wasn't as big as I got to be, but pretty good size. So I thought maybe this is something I could do. And I was a pretty good athlete. I played basketball. I played all the sports, but I finally settled in on basketball, and I actually wound up playing a little JUCO ball down in at Southern Union down in Alabama. But yeah, I couldn't, I thought, what a great life, you just travel around like a gypsy, and you perform in front of these huge crowds, and people love you or they hate you, either or. But I just couldn't think of anything else that I would rather do than this. I had no idea how it actually worked, because this was back in the 70s and 80s. So, there was no internet, and you had to know somebody that was in it to get in it. So, yeah, I didn't really know what it was. I just knew I wanted to be a part of it somehow.
So you mentioned like a gypsy. Like, do you feel that way now? Do you feel like it's that kind of, or do you think it's gotten better?
Oh, I mean, the touring schedule isn't what. When I first got to WWF, we would go sometimes 15, 20, 25 days, come home for a day or two, and then go back out for another, 10, 15 days or whatever. And later on, when I was there, we settled in on what I thought was a great schedule. We would fly out on Saturdays, do a house show on Saturday night, do a house show on Sunday night, or pay-per-view. And then we would do Monday Night Raw on Monday night. And then at that time, Tuesday night, we taped SmackDown. So, you go out on Saturday, you're gone, and then you fly home Wednesday. You got Thursday and Friday to, do the family thing and catch up on whatever you need to do. And, then you're off again. So, yeah, it was great. I mean, I think it's not as much of a gypsy life, because back in the territory days, which I got to be a part of the last few territories. The dying days of the territories. I got to see how it really was, and we were down in Memphis, man. We'd put 1,500, 2,000 miles on a car in a week easily. We would do Memphis on Monday night. We would do Louisville, Kentucky which is like a 7 or 8 hour drive. Louisville, Kentucky on Tuesday night, and then Evansville, Indiana on Wednesday. And then it changed to Tunica, Mississippi. And then Thursday would be a house show somewhere, maybe Jackson, Tennessee, somewhere like that. Same with Friday, maybe Dyersburg, Arkansas. And then Saturday morning, we were in the studio doing live TV, I think from 9 to 11. And then we would go across town, do a show at the big one. It was a huge indoor flea market in Memphis. We'd do that show, and then you'd haul butt to Nashville that night. And Nashville was one of the house, of course, it was one of the big house shows. It was like Louisville, but and then if maybe you got off Sunday, but yeah, I mean it's a gypsy lifestyle, but that's kind of what I loved about it.
Yeah, and before I let Bill say anything, you said something about the territory days, the last of the territory days. You feel personally that we have lost the heart for wrestling as far as that part goes? You think we need the territory days back in the business?
It would be great. Yes, it absolutely would be great. Look, there's no doubt who the top dog is, and probably who's going to be in the in any future we got coming up. WWE's New York has, even before WWE, even before all that. I talked to the old guys when I broke in. They would always tell you, you want to be in New York. That's where it didn't matter how on top or how over you were in any of the territories. You just couldn't compete with Madison Square Garden. You couldn't compete with the Spectrum in Philadelphia. You just couldn't compete with that. And Vince could pay the money that other promoters couldn't. So it's always been number one. I mean, who knows what happens in the future, but I can't see a future where WWE and the number one company in the world. So it would be nice to have territories as developmental territories. Smoky Mountain wasn't a developmental territory. I think I'm not sure. You'd have to ask him. But I know Glenn Jacobs came. I know they were already looking at him when we were down there. Taker came down and worked him, and I think they were already looking. I don't know if they were helping him out any. But when I got sent to Memphis, it was me and Rocky Maivia and Bart Sawyer. Sawyer was a protege of Roddy Piper. Rocky was, of course, Rocky Johnson's son. And I had been working down the Indies in Georgia. So we went out there. It wasn't a developmental territory. You just went out there and went to work, but it was where they were grooming a lot of the stars of the future. And then, Cornette come up with OVW. So what they have in Florida, I mean, you couldn't do it any better as far as a training facility than what they have in Florida. I've never seen anything like it. They got 6 or 7 rings. They've got a huge gym. They've got everything you could possibly need. I wish, and I know, economics are what they are, but I wish they could tour a little more because you can train till you're blue in the face. There's no way to replicate a live crowd. And the more you're in front of a live crowd, the more you learn your craft. You kind of have to. It's on the job. I was talking to one of my trainees a little while ago. It's on the job training. That's the best kind of training. Just jump in with both feet and do it. That's the best way to learn. And in front of a crowd, you can't replicate that.
And I say that to our foster parents too, that because I work in a subdivision, I tell these new foster parents coming in, you might as well jump in full feet because that's the only way you're going to learn how to do this or get it acclimated, right? So I understand what you're saying, man.
Yeah.
Bill.
As part of your early career, you wound up in a little promotion called ECW.
Yeah.
How did that go?
It went good for me. So I had been to Smoky Mountain with Jim Cornette, and it unfortunately shut down. That was the first of many territories I think I probably helped kill off. So, but Smoky Mountain had shut down, and I was back home. And at this point, I quit my regular job, which wasn't a whole heck of a lot of a job, but it was something. I had quit that, and so now I was kind of between a rock and a hard place. But a guy named Ted Allen, a lot of people recognize the name Ted Allen from, he trained Arn Anderson, he trained Big Boss Man, he trained Scotty Riggs, he's trained a lot of guys, a bunch of guys. Kyle Matthews, a top indie star down here, trained a lot of guys, and I got the person that trained me, James Hammonds, Olin James, was trained by Ted Allen. So inadvertently, I was secondhand trained, I guess. But anyway, he was a friend of mine. He always helped us out, always kept us booked, and he had a little moving business. So I came back down here and was helping him with moving jobs, and we'd take a ring here and pick up a ring there, and just whatever. But I'd done Smoky Mountain, so I had a little bit of a name up in the Tennessee, Kentucky area. So I was still getting booked up there a good bit. And a friend of mine from down here in Georgia, a guy named Billy Black, Billy Black and Joel Deaton were a tag team in All Japan Pro Wrestling. And this was the early mid '90s. So tape trading was still in full swing. And I was a early tape trader. So I'd watched him over in Japan. Then I got to work with him and got to be friends with him. Well, Paul E had called him because, ECW, to me, one of the biggest things that ECW did was of course, hardcore wrestling, but was to bring attention to guys like Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero and just these great wrestlers that were kind of flying under the radar, how good they actually were. And it gave them all the luchadors, Rey Mysterio. So to me, that's one of the biggest things they did. But Paul, I guess, wanted the Japanese influence, of course. So he called, and but Joel was tight. Joel was down in Puerto Rico or somewhere. Anyway, he couldn't do it. So Billy told us, well, I got this kid down here. He'd worked for, give him my bio. And so anyway, I get a call from Billy and says, hey, man, you want to go to ECW? And I said, of course I do. So they booked our flights and everything. But I called Cornette because this was after New Jack Mustafa were down here in Georgia with me. We all kind of, well, Mustafa had been going for a little longer. Jack started a little before me. We all wound up down here in Georgia and got to be friends. So he helped me get to Smoky Mountain. Well, once he found out me and Billy was coming, he told Paul, hey, you might want to look at this kid, big kid. So we get up there, we do it. It was great. It was everything I thought it would be. That ECW arena, it was like a insane asylum. I mean, there's some maniacs, man. I don't, there were some crazy guys in the locker room. There's some crazy fans out there too. So, and it was great. We stayed up till the sun was coming up, cutting promos and just hanging out. And had a great time. Came home. Paulie was impressed with us. And was going to use this again. And I got a call from Cornette, maybe a week or two after I got home. And he said, hey, got you a contract. It's in the mail. Check it out. See if it's something you can work with. And, we'll see you up here in Stanford. And I said, how, really? I mean, what? And I knew he had been, he probably spoke for everybody in Smoky Mountain for a job. There were so many guys, there were so many young guys, the Headbangers, me, Candido, all those, young guys that were coming through there. And, he tried to get every one of them a job. Got Tracy Smothers, Dirty White Boy, a lot of the guys from Smoky Mountain at least got a shot up there. And he said, so I knew he had been, talking to him about me. And he said, I saw Vince on TV, and I told him that you just debuted for ECW, and he said to sign you. So, yeah, it was great for me because I wound up. But, I tell people this all the time. I don't know if they believe me or not. But it was a hard decision because even at that stage, at that point in my career, which I was only a couple of years in at that point, even at that stage, I had figured out that I could go to WWE and see what they came up with, or I could go to ECW and I could make a name for myself and parlay that into maybe a better spot when I went. Later on, I found out, firsthand that Vince McMahon really took a lot of pride in saying that he made you, that he, maybe you didn't start there, but your big career boost happened there. So I don't know. At the end of the day, it was a contract. It was guaranteed money, and I said, well, I'm gonna go the safe route, and I think it worked out for me. But I always wondered what would have happened if I just stayed there in ECW because I think Paul would have, done something with it. So who knows?
Can you hear him, Bo?
Oh, I can hear you.
Can you hear him?
I'm sorry, my bad. There you go.
There we go.
Yeah,
Sticking with the ECW theme. Back in 1996, on a Friday, you were called the Stud. Then on Saturday, you were the Punisher.
Yeah.
So tell me how that worked out. And was that a Paul Heyman thing, or was that your guys' idea?
No. We got to, I forget where we were at. We were at one of their regular house shows in Pennsylvania somewhere. And we got to the arena, and Tuco Scorpio was there. And, he was, I guess he was one of Paul's guys. So he was kind of helping, and he was one of the veterans. So he was kind of helping backstage. And I remember him coming to, and I don't think Paul had ever seen me until I got there that day. And, they asked me, what have you been using? I said, well, I was a Punisher in Smoky Mountain. And Scorpio went in the dressing room, came back out and said, okay, you're a stud. I said, hey, sounds great to me. It's money. I love it. So I mean, who wouldn't want to be called a stud, right?
Right.
But then TV was the next night, and we worked the Eliminators. So I guess they swapped over to that. But yeah, it was great, man. We the house show. I think we were supposed to work. It was either Ian or Axel Rotten. I can't remember which one it was. But I forget who his partner was. But the partner didn't show up, so it wound up being a handicap match with me and Billy against Ian or Axel. I can't remember. But it was easy. It was easy stuff. And Eliminators, man, they were great. Perry Saturn, man. Perry Saturn, Perry Saturn really looked out for me a couple of times. We were two new guys coming in, and that was a no bullshit locker room up there. And you didn't want to get off on the wrong way with nobody. And Perry and Cronus both were pretty giving in that. We had a good match, and I pulled out every big move I had. I did an elbow drop off the top, man. I mean, I launched myself in there, and I paid for it the next week. My back was killing me, but it was worth it. But he really it's on YouTube, but it was on. I think it was Shotgun Saturday Night, whatever our beat show at the time, Velocity, whatever it was. Me and him had a match on there, man. He really made me look probably a lot better than I was. So Perry was a good dude. Cronus was too. So it was fun working them. Like I said, man, it was kind of a hard decision. Take guaranteed money or go out on a limb here and take a chance. It may work and it may not. But hey, at the end of the day, it's a business. I mean, we don't like to admit it, and we all love it, and we gladly do it for free. Sometimes probably I'm sure we all have. But at the end of the day, it's a business.
Yep.
Bill?
Sticking with ECW for a minute, who's your favorite person backstage in ECW?
Oh well, probably New Jack, because we New Jack. I mean, that's another guy that really took care of me. We were down here in a little promotion called North Georgia Wrestling, but we had TV in the Atlanta area. Actually, a pretty good TV, and it was kind of it was good. It was a foot in the door with Smoky Mountain, because we had a 3-hour TV block: North Georgia Wrestling, Smoky Mountain, and Memphis, which really was the last two territories that were left. Puerto Rico was still good. Japan, of course, was great. But as far as I think maybe Don Owens out in Portland may have still been going a little into the 90s, but the territories had pretty much gone. And then we had a TV block with two of them, the only two left, plus us. So, New Jack took as soon as he got Smoky Mountain, he called me and said, "Hey, listen, come up here. I bring my, you got me a match?" Or he said, "No, I just want you to come up here, hang out with me for the weekend, and hang around Cornette a little bit." So went to Johnson City. One of their, I think it was Fire on the Mountain. Went to that. It was great. Smoky Mountain Wrestling was everything I thought wrestling would be. Yeah, I never dreamed of anything like WWE or I didn't real honestly hadn't dreamed that big. I grew up in Georgia. I grew up watching NWA. I thought the perfect life for me would have been wrestling in Atlanta on Saturday night and Knoxville on Sunday and Charlotte on that's what I grew up kind of watching. But Smoky Mountain was everything, man. I thought wrestling ought to be. Of course, Cornette, everything made sense. You didn't have to scratch your head about, why are we doing that? It just as entertaining as he was. But New Jack New Jack and Mustafa had Jim Cornette was trying to get into the Atlanta market more so than what he was. I mean, we were we wasn't a huge station at the time, but it was TV. So he would do a show at Cobb County Civic Center, and New Jack Mustafa, he would give us, since it was our TV and we helped promote the show in Cobb County, of course, he would give us a match on it. Well, New Jack Mustafa had a match, and not long after that, they went up. Well, then it was my turn. So I had the match, and I think they basically chicken wing cornet, and made him come out to the stand outside the dressing room door and lock it behind him so he'd have to watch my match. But come back and he said, "Hey, listen, I was really impressed. I did the leg drop, of course. Bobby Eaton couldn't do it as good as Bobby Eaton, but he said, I ain't never seen nobody do it like that except Bobby. So he said, I don't have a spot for it right now. But me and Jack got to be friends. And then, of course, I got Smoky Mountain. Just as they were leaving, they had just finished up there, and we were going to ECW. And so then, once again, he goes to bat for me up there. So good dude, man. He's fun, a lot of fun. Mustafa too. Mustafa was, he's everybody kind of thinks of him as a silent partner, but Mustafa was a workhorse, man. I mean, he was big and he could go. But yeah, probably Jack, I guess.
So working under Cornette and up in the Memphis territories and stuff, what was the biggest lesson you learned from the territory days of Memphis and all that in the Midwest?
I learned that this business is it's not a one show one. It's not WrestleMania happens one time a year. It's the biggest thing that happens in wrestling. It's the biggest thing that is going on in entertainment and sports, and it's all over the world and everything. But Monday night, it's another show. I learned that this business is a grind, and it's not. A lot of times, it's not. That one time that you fall and you fall on your shoulder and hurt your shoulder. It's the 75 times that you're falling and you think it's fine, but you're just softening it's the grind.
Yeah.
Big injuries happen, of course, but a lot of times those big injuries are just set up by the constant. I mean, it's a grind. You tweak your knee a little bit. Like I said, it's different business nowadays, and I'm glad for it because I think it's better for the guys and the girls doing it. I know as as father, and I got two sons doing it. I would much rather them be. I would much rather them. I sleep better at night with them being in the business today than I would, 25 or 30 years ago. I'd be scared to death, what they were doing out on the road or what was going on. So I think that, it's a little better situation for those guys nowadays than it was back then. But it's the grind, man. It's the 6 and 7 days a week, two matches on Saturday. It's the grind that gets you. You get tired, you get lazy, you're not training like you're supposed to because you're on the road all the time, and then boom, injury happens. And you try to work through it, and you do work through it, and then it gets worse, and then you aggravate it, and then you wind up with something totally, you're out for a year and a half. So that the territories, and I think anybody's ever worked a territory schedule will tell you, it's not that one injury. It's the grind of 7 days a week, just going and trying to keep going.
Right.
That's what does it.
Gotcha. Bill?
Absolutely. So I'm just going to veer off into WWE for a minute. You started with the Truth Commission, correct?
Yep.
How was that for you?
Oh, it was great. Like I said, they sent me down to Memphis, which was a dream come true because, like I said, I grew up watching Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee and all those guys, and so once again, me and Tommy Rich got to be buddies. And so we traveled, me and him and Brad Armstrong traveled. We rode together up the Smoky Mountain. And then me and Tommy went out to Memphis together. We were out there at the same time. So, of course, we started riding together again. But we went down there. It was a little different atmosphere than Smoky Mountain was. Smoky Mountain felt a little more, even though it wasn't, it felt a little more like a developmental territory because a lot of the guys down there in Smoky Mountain, and I don't know if this was, I feel like it was by design with Cornette. They were real free about, telling you what you were doing wrong, what you were doing right. Try this, that didn't work. So, I mean, it was almost like you were being coached. Tracy Smothers was there, and most of these guys were in Memphis too. But Tracy Smothers was down there. Dirty Whiteful was down there. Ricky and Robert were down there, and that's another two guys that went to bat for me, especially in Smoky Mountain. I'd met them out on the Indies here in Georgia and Alabama, and so it was almost like you were at a developmental territory. Memphis was, let's go to work, make money. I mean, not to say that, yeah, not to say that guys wasn't, willing to teach you stuff, willing to help, but it was I don't know, it was like going from fourth gear to damn sixth gear. Just jumping a couple of gears and going high speed because, man, you hit the road. I'm Memphis to Louisville, man, that thing ain't no joke. You drive like 7-8 hours, get there, rest, and then you got to drive 7-8 hours back because the next night you got to go down to Mississippi. So, but it was fun. It was living the dream. I mean, we were, and we were working, with, especially when I first got out there, man, I was working with every night. I was working with Jerry Lawler, Brian Christopher. Don't get enough credit. Don't get enough credit to how good he was. Brian Christopher, man, he was a good worker. It was entertaining, and he was. We got up there together and kind of had our runs together and everything. But man, I was working with him, and I learned a lot working with him too, especially working with Lawler. How can you not learn? Working with Jerry Lawler 3 or 4 times a week. So it was it was different, but it was just different in a good way. I mean, I enjoyed it. They sent they sent us down there. We were hoping we get down there and then we do 3 matches and then we'd be on the main roster. But that's we stayed down there about 6 months. But we had a good run down there. I mean, they used us very well. I think me and Kurgan were tag team champions a couple of times. I don't recall all the people that were involved, but I do recall the politics behind it. We were the tag team champions down there. I think Dutch Mantell was doing the booking, and Dutch was another one that always I think took a liking to me and looked out for me down in Puerto Rico too. But Dutch was doing the booking, and we were the tag team champions. And they brought, I can't remember who, but they brought somebody else in to do the booking and immediately took the belts off of us and put them on somebody else. And the next week, Dutch Mantell was back. Pat Patterson was sitting in the, and I'd love to ask Kurgan when I see him if he remembers this. Pat Patterson was sitting in the crowd watching our match when we took the belts back. We were told to make sure there was no doubt who the champions were. So, so we were figured in there pretty good down there, but we wanted to be on the main roster, so we got the call up, and a lot of people don't know this either. The Truth Commission that everybody saw on Monday Night Raw was myself, Kurgan, Robert Mayette, and Sniper. The original Truth Commission was myself, Rob Kurgan, and Tank Mantar. Been in the WWF as Mantar. He wore the bull's head out, Yeah, early 90s, right. So right. It was Mantar. He was Tank, and he wore a mask because, of course, everybody know it was Mantar. But he was originally with us. They sent us up to Stanford, Connecticut, and the Commandant. The original Commandant was Robin Smith. He was an actor over in South Africa, and he had met Bret Hart. There was the Truth Commission was kind of Bret's, I guess kind of Brett's project or something that he had brought to Vince. But Vince liked it, 3 big guys, of course. So, but yeah, originally it was Mantar, and they never brought him. I think we did a shotgun Saturday night with him, and then we came back and they left him in Memphis and replaced him with Luke Poirier, who was sniper, but he wrestled over in Germany for Otto Wanz. He wrestled as Rambo over there and was a huge star. So, they replaced him with that, and then that's what we went with. And then, of course, later on, Don Callis came in after Robin Smith had some visa trouble or something, and so they brought Don Callis in. And it was because Robin Smith was actually a South African soldier at one time. So, he taught us how to march and how to salute and, do all the stuff to try to make us look legit. But of course, Don, he came in and we kind of went in a totally different direction, which I thought was great. I thought it was much more attitude era because we were kind of going down the rabbit hole of David Koresh, the Branch Davidians down in Waco, that whole thing that happened with that. We were kind of going down that rat hole, and you'd have to ask Don because I think, he was the one that told me, but I think there was actually some talk of having us go down to we were in Waco for Monday Night Raw. And I think there was some talk of us going down to where the Branch Davidians had the bunker or whatever. But, it was still kind of recent in people's memories. So I think it, even for the attitude era, it might have been a little, I don't know if distasteful is the right word. I mean, some of the stuff we did back then, you get locked up for now. But, I could see the argument for, okay, maybe it's a little too soon because it only happened a few years before that. Right. So, but no, I mean, we had a good run. I hate that it ended, man. I really thought we could have went. Don Callis was great. I mean, still is. You watch him on TV. And I have to tell this because he doesn't get enough credit. Don Callis is a tremendous worker as well. When they first put him with us, we of course we hit the road and we were doing a house show. I think it was in Maine, and he was actually working a singles match. We were in a 6-man later on, but he was working the singles match, and man, he went out there and just tore the place down. And everybody knows the mic skills and everything else, but I don't think people actually realize how good of a worker he was, back then.
I'll be honest with you. I did not know he worked back. I knew okay. So I used to be, I don't know how to say this. My brother introduced me to heels. I could not stand MJF. And my brother would tell me he's doing his job. Then if he can't stand MJF, Don Callis, I cannot, but he's good. He's that good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's amazing. And I'm like, so I have to go back and look him up. I'd love to see him wrestle. So that'd be great.
And he tells a story, I think, on Jim Cornette's podcast. Him and Rick Martel were tag team, and I think they were supposed to go to WCW or something. They were actually supposed to bring him into New York as a tag team with Rick Martel. They were doing a tag team, and but something changed, and that's the way things happen up there. Something changed, and then they wound up bringing him in with us, which was great for us because we just lost our mouthpiece. I don't think any of us had the mic skills to carry a group or even close to. And as soon as I opened my mouth, the whole South African thing went right out the window because for obvious reasons. I ain't from South Africa, but I'm from the South. Okay, so I had to keep my mouth shut anyway. Kurgan and Luke probably pulled it off, but I was going to be the mute of the bunch, I guess. But yeah, man. I guess the thing I remember the most about it was that we all hung out together. We were all friends. We all got to be friends. We rode together. We traveled together. We didn't really ever have any problems. I mean, we had fun together. You know, if we were in a town and we were just sitting at the hotel, we'd go out and find something to do. We'd walk around, and we always did it together. And it was all new. You know, this was all of our first run at the big time. So we were having a blast. Uh, we had we had some interesting trips, and uh, you know
Oh, we'll ask questions about those in a few.
no.
That comes up later.
Hey, I got to. You mentioned a bunch of old legends and stuff. I have a question. I have this guy on the podcast next week. I'm scared to death about this, but I'm gonna ask you: have you
Sure.
ever had any run-ins with? I wrote his name on with Rip Rogers.
Absolutely, I have. Yes.
Tell
Rip
me briefly what am I into? What am I in for? Is this guy?
Oh, no, nothing like that.
Okay. All right.
No, but he was. I think I met him in Memphis the first time, but then when I went down to OVW, of course Rip was there, and he was just he's a book of wrestling knowledge. Uh, I he had those kids down there. I mean, he had them tuned up good. I mean, when I first went to OVW, these were Danny Davis already had OVW run, and Rip was. I don't think Rip was in on not necessarily the business side, but of course he was. Helping with training and stuff like that. But even before Cornette got down there, he'd already had the promotion running, and his talent roster was just. I mean, it was Rob Conway, Nick Dinsmore, and I know I'm leaving some people out here. I'm sure Damager, who was later on one of the Basham brothers. Yep. And let's Frank Miller, Trailer Park Trash, comes out in a wife beater, and I mean, ain't nobody ever done that character any better than Trailer Park Trash. But these were all Danny's guys. He had all those guys down, and most of those guys wound up, of course, like Rob Conway and Nick Dinsmore's Eugene. They wound up, going up to the main roster, but there was so many other guys down there that were so good, that didn't necessarily go to the main roster, but we're on developmental or we're getting some money or something. Right. But Rip was down there, man. I used to watch him, especially in Memphis, but especially over in Continental. He was just he was always in shape. So I kind of knew he was a bodybuilder. I kind of figured he probably done some bodybuilding contests before. So, and he was still in shape when I met him. So, yeah, he was a good dude.
I had a phone call. He told me to call him. I had a phone call with him, and that was probably the most interesting phone call I ever had in my life. So I just felt like that. It was good. He seemed like a good dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to ask you this.
Sure.
This next couple of questions probably, hope they don't hit home too hard. You opened WrestleMania 2000 alongside the late, great Big Boss Man.
Yep.
What was your absolute favorite untold road story about riding with Ray Taylor? And what are your fondest memories of riding with Ray Taylor? Boss Man.
We were on, any road trip with Ray was memorable. Ray was he worked at the Cobb County Jail before he was a wrestler. So he was an actual I don't know if he was mandated, but he was a cop.
Okay.
He would drive, and we'd usually, we wasn't highballing. We'd rent whatever they had, but we usually wound up, with a Cadillac or a Lincoln or something like that. And he would mat that thing as soon as we left. And those things had a limiter on them. They'd go 104 miles an hour, and it would start randomly cutting cylinders off, so you're not out there, going 140 miles an hour in your Hertz rental car. we'd do 104 all the way up there. And I remember at one point, I finally just made up my mind. I said, well, if you got to go, what better way to go than, going 104 miles an hour with Ray Trailer driving. So I kind of accepted it. If it happened, it happened. And, so, but I remember being over there going half asleep, and I could hear that car hitting, it would get to 104 and it would start skipping and above, and it'd drop it back down to 102. And then it hit again and it'd be up to 104. He never slowed down. And I guess the question is, well, how many tickets did he get? He never got a ticket.
Damn.
Anytime, and then we got pulled over a bunch. Anytime we got pulled over, and you could stop, you look over your shoulder, you see these cops, and we're doing 104 down, their interstate, and you can see them coming. They're mad as hell, they're cussing us under their breath, and they're pulling them sunglasses off, and they're pissed off, and they get up to the window, and they turn into, oh my God, you're the big boss man, and he's like, yeah. It always wound up with a handshake. Thanks for what you're doing for us, man. Thanks for what you. We never got a ticket. Never.
So, would you say he's one of your best friends in the business?
Yes. Yeah. I didn't know him. I did not know him until the night I debuted with him.
Okay.
Which is odd because we only lived 30 miles from each other. But from that day forward, we were buds. Our daughters would come over and spend the night and do stuff like that. And Ray opened a lot of doors for me. In Ray Trailer, Vince loved Ray Trailer. Vince Ray knew him a lot better than I did, but I got to know Vince. Vince appreciated people that are real. And Ray was real. Ray could talk to you about hunting and fishing and NASCAR and everything else, but he could talk to you about the stock market too, and what he was doing. He was building. He would go up and talk to Vince about whatever project he was working on, or this and that. He was one of Vince's guys. Ray told me that when he went to WCW, I guess when his contract was up down there, that Vince called him and said, hey, listen, you start, like I said, he didn't start with Vince, but that's where the big boss man was born. And that, of course, is what people remember Ray Trailer for. So he said, I want you started here, this is home. This is where I want you to finish up. So he goes back and, and then, me and him got hooked up. Yeah, we were buddies. We did a lot of stuff together, and he introduced me to the Stein, because they were in WCW at the time. He introduced me to the Steiners, Rick and Scott. Introduced me to Kurt Hennig. Just all these guys that I got to know because of Ray. But he was great dude, man. Great dude.
Bill, man, go ahead.
All right, so my next question actually comes from the same boss man era of your career. Stealing the Undertaker's motorcycle.
Yes, I got to hear this story.
Yeah. So I get to they had broken us up, which I was kind of bummed out about. But in typical Ray Trailer fashion, he just pumped me. No, you're gonna be on your own. You're gonna be a singles. It's gonna be good for you. He had to get his knee scoped anyway, so he's gonna be out for a month or two. And I showed up to Raw, and I was coming in, and I met Vince walking with his cup of coffee, and he said, "Bull, you ride, don't you?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I do. I got a fat boy." And he said, "Good," and walked off. I said, "Okay, great." And then one of the riders came to me and said, "Oh, you're stealing Undertaker's bike tonight." And I said, "Oh, does Mark know about this?" Or
right?
So, yeah.
Do I have stupid right across my forehead? I don't
right.
know.
So, So, but he did, and he was cool with it, I guess. But so we had to do several. We did several takes, and at the time, I don't know if they had a deal. I get Mark would probably know better than I would, but I don't know if they had a deal with them. But every week there was a kind of like Orange County choppers, or that was the craze back then. Was custom choppers. Well, there was a company called Titan that was, I don't know if it had any relation to Titan Sports or what, but they would bring bikes to every town we were in. Whoever the local dealer was, local Harley Davidson dealer, would bring two of the Titan bikes, and I guess Mark would choose, which one he wanted to ride. Well, the guy told me that brought the bike. He said, "You ride, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I ride." He said, "Man, if you want to light this thing up, it had a big motor in it. I think it was like 112, big motor in it." And he said, "Man, it'll light the back tire up if you feel comfortable doing that." And I said, "Oh, you bet I do." So we did the first take, and it bogged down a little on me, so I didn't get the back tire to spin. And then we did the second take, and I nailed it just right. And I mean, I blew the back tire off that thing all the way up the ramp, and the ramp, went up and went outside. They had a whole block blocked off. So I'd take this thing around the block a couple of times, and then I'd zoom back down the ramp, And then I said, well, let's do one more and put it in the can. And sure enough, next time it bogged down a little bit on me. And they used the one, if you watch it, the back tire doesn't spin a bit. The one I hope they would have used. I blew the back tire, but it was great. The guy that Taker comes out and throws everybody talks about that. The guy that just flew over the hood of the other car. His name was BJ. So he was D'Lo's buddy. He was down in OVW. He came up to do extra work, but he played college football somewhere. I can't remember. He was a good dude. He was a good worker too. I think they had him under developmental for a little while, but yeah, he was one of the boys from Louisville. But yeah, that was great. And then next week, of course, me and Vince met him and had him locked up. So that was a lot of fun, man. A lot of fun.
So everybody that's watching on the YouTube channel, please subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can hear more videos and see more videos. Bull Buchanan's our guest tonight. We're just touching the surface. A lot to come, and I hope you have time. But, so let's talk about what I remember Bull Buchanan as. His white button-up shirt with that black tie, right to censor faction.
Yep.
How much crowd heat did you guys get? I know how much crowd heat you got on the TV from what I've seen. How much crowd heat did you guys get for that faction and what you guys were doing?
I don't, everybody talks about, the pops and the road. It was totally opposite. I mean, it was not a pop. It was just, they hated us. But I think at that time we were probably some of the most hated guys on the TV show. So, when that music hit, man, people just, they didn't like us, and that's what we were shooting for.
A fan.
We weren't trying to be cool heels. We were the total opposite of a cool heel. We were the dorky. JR always referred to Stevie with the white socks. We did that stuff on purpose. Stevie wore the short pants where you could see the white socks. Ivory wore the long skirt, and she would wear like the old 1940s bloomer thing up under it. So when she took a bump, she'd throw her legs up in the air, and then the bloomer would come out. And we made ourselves look like that. So, but it was actually, I think it was Godfather. Godfather was, Val wore the white pants. Everybody had a little something different. Val wore the white pants. So Godfather said, we need to do something, He said, let's cut the sleeves out of our shirts. And I was like, yeah, of course, man. Because, we both had, we were pretty stocked up, me and Godfather at the time in the gun department. So we cut the sleeves out of our shirts, and that was our little quirk. But we had the greatest stick on the house shows, and they never really brought it to TV. They asked us about it, but they didn't bring it to TV. But we would always go out, and Stevie would always get the mic, and he would always start telling, the how, he had reformed us, and I was just, this dirty prison guard that would beat people up, and Godfather was, of course, a pimp, and, smoked weed and did all that stuff. And then he would give the microphone to us, kind of, so we could give our testimony. And, I would talk about some, the awful things I used to do to inmates and blah, blah, blah. And then we'd hand the mic off to Godfather. And of course, Godfather would start talking about, how he'd changed his life and everything. But then he'd start talking about the girls and the smoking, and then he'd start getting excited. And as he started getting excited, the crowd started getting excited because they're thinking they're going to see the Godfather come back. And, Steve would slap the mic out, and then I'd chime in something. I'd usually say something about one of the girls from whatever town we were in. Remember that girl? We'd start getting the old buddy thing going, and then Steve would slap the mic out of our hands. Like, what's wrong with you guys? It was a great little stick on the house shows. It got a pop every time, but we knew it was coming to an end, and unfortunately, like I said, I think it could have had a little more legs, but it was coming to an end. We knew it. We were in Pensacola, Florida for a house show.
Okay.
And so we got out the ring. We got ready to do our little, stick like we did every night. And Stevie got the mic and said, I'm going to slap you. And he slapped me. This is all off the cuff, And so I of course, I played along with it. So I got pissed off and grabbed him. And when I grabbed him was the first time I'd heard people cheer anything that any of us had done in a while. I grabbed him and I backed him to the corner. And I was holding him in the corner. And I had my fist back, like, you want me to hit him? And I heard the crowd just getting louder and louder. And I'm like, there's no way they're doing this because of what I'm doing. And I'm from the South. I heard in the other corner of the ring, I heard somebody running, and I turned around and looked, and Godfather was coming for the whole train. And I was literally still holding Stevie by the neck. I just stepped out of the way, and Godfather just slammed into him, and he just like a cartoon, just slid down the corner turnbuckle, like a greasy spot on the mat. Jack Lanza was the agent. Stevie rolled out of the ring. Jack Lanza came down, picked him up by the back belt loop. Now, Jack Lanza's 70-something years old at the time, and carried him by the belt to the back. And then I think we got like a huge ovation, and, but that's, that stuff never made TV. There's a lot of heat, man. Well, I mean, we were taking away all the stuff that had made us, that we were in storyline terms, we were taking away all the stuff that had helped us win the Monday Night Wars. The Godfather and his girls. China had just done the Playboy thing, and we got the rub from all the top guys. We worked with The Rock, we worked with Austin, we worked with Billy Gunn, Road Dogg. China, who was red hot at the time. We worked with all the top baby faces, so it was a good time. It was, made a lot of money. I did, but people wonder why God, they say, why didn't Godfather like it? Well, if you know Charles, it's pretty obvious why he didn't like it, because it pretty much just anti everything that Charles Wright is. But he lost a lot of money. It hardly ever gets talked about. He lost a lot of money. He was selling a ton of merchandise. I mean, I guarantee you, he was in the top 5, and you're talking about Rocky and Austin and Undertaker and people like that. I guarantee you, he had to be in the top 5, if not the top 3 merchandise sellers in the company at that time. And he lost all that when he went to the RTC. So, and the Godfather, I mean, that was really him. I mean, that really was, I mean, if you know him, he loves having a good time, and so it was everything that he wasn't. And plus he lost a ton of money doing it. So
absolutely.
Val did too. I'm sure, maybe not as much, but I mean, Val Venus was a huge baby face, at that time in the company. And, once again, all that goes away when you put the white shirt and the black tie on.
As you're mentioning names and talking, I just remember Raw with you guys on it, and all that stuff, and it was just, it's so cool. Bill, you got another one?
So the next time I saw Bull Buchanan after the Right to Censor went to separate ways was B2.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yep. Uh, there again, just right place, right time. I guess I had, we went off the road after that. We were off the road for God about a year, but we're still getting paid very well. So I called Jr. up, who was a huge advocate for me. Him and Jim Cornette. I like to always mention those guys because had it not been for those two guys, I'm sure I would have still been plugging along somewhere, but I don't know if it'd been, at the very top of the game. Jr. was a great advocate for me. Um, so I called him up and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm just sitting here at the house. Can I go down to OVW and try to work on it?" He said, "Absolutely, take off." So I did. And we went down there and um, I was down there for a little while and came up and started doing house shows. So I was back on the road. So I was happy about that. You always want to be on TV, and but I did some velocity matches. Got to work Mike Awesome, which was a bucket list thing for me. Mike Awesome. Um, I was a huge when I first got started. In the very early '90s, I was watching Booker T. I was actually watching them when they were down in Texas in Global. I was watching Booker T. I was watching Billy Gunn. I think he was working for like maybe the IWF in Florida or something, and then of course the Smoking Guns. I was watching those guys, and I knew that they were, kind of the same size and build that I was, and I saw how agile they and how well they moved, and I said, that's what I got to do to make myself stand apart. Uh, so I took a lot of influence from Booker T. I got a lot from Billy Gunn. Uh, but I was watching those guys, and I tried to. Mike Awesome, of course, was one of them. That little step up thing he did to the top rope. That's where did the. I said, well, dang, I wonder if I could jump to the top rope. So got to work him and had a pretty good match. Got to work Matt Bloom, another friend of mine. We kind of came in WWE about the same time and had been around for a minute. So got to work a few matches with him. And I was backstage one day and they said, "Hey, you're with John Cena tonight." And I knew John from OVW, of course. I was down there when him and Orton and Batista and the Brock, Shelton, the Golden Class was there. So I got to know all those guys, which was great, especially getting to see them how well they did later on in the careers. But so I knew him from there, and I knew that he was doing the rap thing. So yeah, but I wasn't sure exactly how they wanted me to approach it. So me and Shelton Benjamin were riding together at the time, and I said, "Well, I got to go out to the mall and try to come up with something." And my first thought was, okay, bodyguard. He's a rapper. I'm his bodyguard. But the more I thought about it, the more I said, maybe we go in a different direction with this. So uh, Eminem had just come out, and I was a big Eminem fan. Eminem had just come out with a new CD. So we had it in the CD player. We're on the way to the mall, and I thought about it, and I said, "That's it, Slim Shady, Slim Shady." The tan, the pants, the white wife beater, So that's kind of where B Square came from.
All right.
And John loved it, because I mean it was of course we were serious once we got in the ring, but it was comedy, two white
Yeah.
guys, right? It was kind of along the lines of Too Cool, I two friends, Scotty Too Hottie and of course uh, um, Lawler. So you know,
Wow.
but it
Oh,
was it was fun. It was John's a down to earth guy. He was then. I'm sure he still is. Uh, last time I saw him, he was still acted the same. Him and Iraqi, they've gotten so big, but they're both down to earth people. So it's nice to see good people, do well.
Right, absolutely. So, did you know John when you worked with him? Did you think he was going to be as big as as he is?
When I first saw him, we were out in he was working out in California for I think Rick Bassman. I think it was ex anyway, the promotion out there. He'd come and do dart matches, and he looked like $1 million. I mean, he looked like his gimmick was, I think, the prototype, and that's exactly what he looked like. I mean, he looked like $1 million. But a lot of guys do. But when I got to OVW, I found out he could talk, and how well he could talk. I mean, really well he could talk. But you never know. I mean, people slip between they slide between the nets sometimes. It's not like they hadn't been a ball dropped once or twice on guys, but and of course then they had him come out with the ruthless aggression thing. But once he started rapping, man, that was gold. I mean, it was. And my favorite John Cena is as good a dude as he is. My favorite John Cena is heel John Cena. That was classic back then, man. That was classic. Yeah, man. He was a good heel.
My favorite John Cena. I know this is not about him, but when they turned him heel, WrestleMania a few years ago,
yeah,
and they did that thing. This is how good he is, right? You had him and Punk in the same ring, and they swapped promos. To me, if you can do that, you're damn good.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
But I want to talk to you about a certain night with John Cena. You were brought out to the ring by Mick Foley.
Yeah.
And you claimed that John Cena ruined your life.
Yeah,
yeah, what was that like? What was that about?
I had to fib a little bit. He didn't wreck my life as bad as I said he did. No, I was at home, and I was sitting in my office at the house, and my son Brooks Jensen was in the other room, and he was watching. I'm sure it was wrestling. And I got a call. It was 203, which I knew was Stamford, Connecticut. So I was like, oh, God, do I owe him money or, what? What have I done? But I picked it up, and it was John Laurinaitis. He said, hey, Bull, he said, would you be available next Monday? And I said, sure. What you got in mind? He said, well, let me see, and I'll call you back. And I said, okay. So I went in and asked Ben, and I said, hey, where's Raw at next week? And he said, Raw's in Boston, Massachusetts. And I said, oh, okay, it's got to be something with Cena. And, John called me back, and he said, yeah, he said, why don't you come up and do this? And it was great, man. I hadn't been in I'd been a few years before that. I would always kind of stay in touch with them. I was over in Japan, sometimes when they were in town, I'd go to the show to, see the old buddies and hang out a little bit. But yeah, I went up there and did that with John and Rocky was in. I mean, I thought about it afterwards. I said, when I was there, or when I had my run there, usually they just gave you a few bullet points on interviews that you wanted to hit. Make sure you hit this, this, and this, and then go. It was more off the top of your head. And, they had the whole segment, I don't want to say a script, but they had who was coming out when and that kind of stuff. And I was looking at it in the hotel when I got back that night in Boston, and I said, God, man, if that's the last time I ever get in the WWE ring, how could you go out any better? I was in a segment with John Cena, Mick Foley, and The Rock. I mean, how much better does it get than that?
Quit your career now. You got
yeah.
I mean, absolutely.
At least from my time frame in the business, that Mick Foley and Rocky were they were two of the engines that kept the train moving in WWE back then. So, and John Cena was, of course, John Cena. He was, he was the engine driving the place then. So, man, if that was the last time, how much better could it get than that? So it was fun. I got to meet some guys I hadn't met. I got to meet. I'm a huge Sheamus fan. I have been ever since day one. Got to meet him, talk to him. Got to meet the Miz. Some of the guys that came along after me. So it was great.
Awesome. So I'm gonna get into our rapid fire questions. I know Bill has to go in about 10 minutes.
Okay.
You transitioned from the ring to a career in law enforcement, and what we talked about this afternoon, you've been retired 2 years.
Yep.
What was harder, wrestling 300 days a year on the road or working active law enforcement?
Working active law enforcement, because even bad days on the road were not actually that bad, but not necessarily any one thing, or it's just in law enforcement, you dealing with people on the worst day of their life. Most of them have never had a day like this. The worst day that's ever happened to them. And just it's that kind. It's real life. It ain't no. We live in a fantasy world where we can do all these amazing things in the ring and we don't actually get hurt, and we can play these characters. But law enforcement, that's the real deal. It ain't no make believe, and it ain't all. The good guys don't always win. Unfortunately, a lot of times, there's no blow off, or there's no comeback match, or there's no when I get back from this injury, you got beat and you got to take it and go on. So yeah, definitely law enforcement.
So you have a son. I did not realize you had two sons in the business, but you have a son.
Yeah.
His name is Ben.
Yep.
He's tearing up the NXT as Brooks Jensen.
Yep.
What's the number one piece of advice you gave your son getting into the business?
I don't know if it was the number one piece of advice, but I really tried to instill in him what was instilled in me by the guys that helped me. A lot of guys took time out of their day, their week, their year, whatever. Jim Cornette, Jim Ross. I could go. The guy that trained me, Ron Starr, Tommy Rich, just Bob Armstrong. Tons of guys took time that they didn't have to teach me something, So I taught him respect for the business.
Okay.
And if you watch him on NXT or Evolve, you can tell he's old school. He's the oldest 20-year-old I've ever met. But he takes the business seriously. Sometimes maybe to a fault, but I'm very proud of the way he. I've always looked at that. If you protect the business will. If you take care of the business will take care of you. If you do business the right way and deal with people the right way and do what you're supposed to do. This business has provided me a good living for a long time, and I still make money off of it. And God bless. I mean, anybody in this business, if you can make money in this business, God bless you, man, because it's hard to do. But I just taught him respect for the business. I taught both of them that, respect for the business, and and I told them the same thing. I told them it's grind. It's a grind. You don't, it's not that leg drop off the top in Madison Square Garden at the pay-per-view that did you back in. It's the 10 times you went out over the top rope backwards and landed on your back, in somewhere in Iowa or, a little town in Alabama or Arkansas or, it's all those that add up that end up doing you in. So
you traveled overseas and there's some stuff over there. So without a translator, how hard is it to order a meal?
Actually, it's not that bad.
Okay.
Japan has been so Americanized that everything is written in English. Of course, they have it in Japanese too, but everything's written in English. So, and this was 10, 15 years ago. I'm sure it's even more accessible now, but it really wasn't that bad.
Okay.
You could drop somebody, and you could drop back then, you know, in the mid 2000s. You could take somebody from the United States that knew nothing about Japan or the language or customs or anything, drop them somewhere, and they could find what they could, you know, find their way to a motel and find somebody to, you know, it's very very American accessible, I guess
Okay.
is the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
But it was a little bit of culture shock, though. You know, I was one
Yeah.
of the taller guys over there, so I had to learn to duck my head real quick. You know,
Right. Right.
yeah, a few
So,
times.
Smoky Mountain Wrestling, Jim Cornette,
Yeah,
a genius promoter or just a plain old maniac?
genius, a
Huh?
genius maniac,
Huh?
a genius maniac. Jim Cornette took me under his wing, and I, you know, if he's listening, I sure appreciate it. Took me under his wing, and I tried to listen. I tried to keep my mouth shut and keep my ears open and listen to what he told me and what he told other guys, and how he ran towns and how he, you know, promoted the business and what he thought about the business, and a lot of what you know shaped my opinion and you know the way I look at the business came from Jim Cornette. You know, I like I said in Smoky Mountain, everything made sense. Everything made sense. You never had to ask yourself, "Oh, why are we doing this?" You know, those questions you ask when you're in the car, you know, ride at 11 o'clock at night. You know, why are we doing this? That doesn't make any sense. You know, why wouldn't we do it this way?
Well, let me tell you
Uh,
something. I'm going to clip this for you. Jim Cornette won't ever read it off my feed. Maybe I'll clip it and send it to you so you can send it to Jim so he can see you answer that question on Huge Pop Entertainment. How about that?
sure.
Maybe he'll say, "Hey, you know, I'd love to hear that. I would love to hear the feedback. Really, I would. I have mad respect for Jim Cornette. I
Jim
really do.
Cornette was he had this arch rival, and you know when Jim Cornette has before Vince Russo, there was a guy named Terry Landell. Before Vince Russo ever crossed the Cornette's radar, there was a guy named Terry Landell, and he ran. I think it may have been, and don't quote me. Might have been Tennessee Mountain Wrestling or something like that. Anyway, he was a local indie promoter, and he was just a thorn in Cornette's side. And I was sitting. We were doing a show at the Knoxville at the I don't remember if it was the Civic Center, the big arena there where we did shows. And I was sitting in the parking garage, and I was eating. I had some chicken and rice, and I was sitting there eating it. You know, I was way early because I was driving in from Georgia. I saw Cornette, and I looked at the. They had the, you know, the old boards that you had to put the letters on, the lighted things out front. You had to put the letters, and
Yeah.
you know, it was supposed to say Smoky Mountain Wrestling tonight, 7 whatever. Somebody, I'm sure it was Terry, had went over there and changed the letters around and said Tennessee Mountain Wrestling, whatever his wrestling was. And I saw Cornette going down in front of the arena. I'm sitting in the parking lot. He doesn't see me, and it's not crowded. You know, it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Cornette sees it, slams the brakes on his Taurus that he was driving, slid to a stop. Door flies open. Now he doesn't know I saw any of this. Door flies open. He goes over there. He starts ripping letters off and stomping them in the ground. So you know he was. We were somewhere one night, and I think we were in Kentucky somewhere. We were blowing off an angle with Buddy Landell. Buddy Landell was part of our group. Me, Tommy Rich, Terry Gordy, and Buddy Landell. And if you watch any Smoky Mountain Wrestling, Buddy Landell cut one of the greatest babyface promos in the history of babyface promos. Basically, just kind of shot on himself. But it was the prelude to him wrestling Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental belt at our Night of Champions, the same place Undertaker came down and worked Kane. So this was a big deal, and it was leading to us turning on Buddy, and we turned on him that night in Kentucky. And I mean, he was bleeding, and Tommy was biting his head. And, you know, Tommy had blood running out of his mouth, and Buddy was, you know, bleeding everywhere. people were starting to come out of the stands, and so Cornette called us off and said, "All right, let's go." We started down the aisle, and I looked, and I knew it wasn't the aisle we came down, and I was trying to get his attention, and people were going nuts, and they're already grabbing for us. And as Cornette's bodyguard, I mean, it was kind of a real position, you know. If you watch the Ray Traylor Dark Side of the Ring, hear some of the stories, you know. Being Cornette's bodyguard was a real job because, you know, people would take pokes at him. They'd take a swipe at him if they could.
Right.
And, you know, we're going down this aisle, and I'm trying to get his attention. I said, Jimmy. And I finally said, Jimmy. He said, what? I said, we're going down the wrong aisle. He said, I know what damn aisle we're going down. I said, okay. So I just shut up. We kept going down the aisle, and we walked right into a brick wall. We walked right in. There was no door there. You know, there was no dressing room door. We're on the opposite side of the arena. So we get there, and he turns around and looks at me and says, all right, let's go the other way.
Nice.
And, you know, by then, the crowd had already filled the aisle up. There wasn't no aisle there anymore. It was just people. But shit, I mean, you know, I had Terry Gordy and Tommy Rich with me. I wasn't, you know, and Cornette swinging that racket, you know, hell, we plowed back through him.
Ain't nobody can touch you.
No, not with Terry Gordy, man.
No.
He was great too, and he was another one. He was a big influence. I was a huge Freebird and Von Erich fan. Man, Terry Gordy was just, and that's one thing, you know. Not so much advice I gave boys, but I had them watch because I knew that they watched the current stuff, of course. But I wanted them to see some of those, and you know, Terry Gordy and Barry Windham and guys like, you know, guys that were our size, you know, that I watched and tried to emulate. Not a good, you know, not a very poor imitation, but I said this is what you're shooting for. You know, if you can do it like they did it, now you've got something hanging hat on. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So do you guys generally wear them damn ties so tight around your neck to piss us off as fans, or is that just something you guys did?
That's another great story. So if you go back, me and Godfather had a match right after I joined the RTC. Me and Godfather had a match. He was still a Godfather. It wasn't for the girls yet. This was one of our first matches. We did a spot where he threw me over the top rope, and I did a thing where I would skin the cat, you know, back into the ring. Well, I skinned the cat back in the ring, and he threw me back over and grabbed my tie and was choking me on the tie. Well, I didn't realize it. You know, it was a real tie, and that thing tightened up on me, and you know, like choked me to death. So after that, I never wore a real tie again. I wore a clip-on.
Okay.
And you know, and of course, you know, Lawler would make comments. You know, I bet that tie's a clip-on. It really was. And there was another time, and I think it was me and Godfather wrestling. There was another time. He was behind me and went and pushed me in the ropes and pulled me back off. And when it did, I mean, I was sitting there watching. I was looking down, and this damn tie just wrapped around the rope like that. And when he pulled me back off, man, it actually broke on my neck. So, yeah, it was clip-ons after that. And we'd get rid of them as quick as we could.
Nice. So, with The Godfather, how hard did you laugh when Papa Shango got forced into the RTC Anti-Fun Squad?
You know, I got to the building, and Stevie met me. And he said, hey, have you heard? And this was before we did it, you know. He said, hey, have you heard what they're doing? And I said, no. He said, they're putting the Godfather with us. I said, does Charles know about this? And he said, I think they're telling him right now. And, you know, I won't say Vince was down there talking to him or something. And I could just tell by his body language he wasn't feeling it. You know, he wasn't feeling the RTC. But, you know, he didn't like it. And, you know, I talked about some of the reasons why. Of course, you got to think. I mean, he was one of the biggest baby faces in the company. You know, him and Val was a big baby face. You know, Ivory was a big baby face. Me and Stevie, we were already jerks, so we were just, you know, we wasn't changing. We were we were just the same old guys, just with a different outfit. But you know, it was a total character flip for those guys. So,
Right.
But he did it. He did it with a. I mean, he did it with a smile. You know, I mean, honestly, I knew he didn't like it, but it was you.
Right.
It was, you know, you never came across on TV.
Okay.
You know,
Go ahead.
no. I mean, he was totally professional. He went out there and he did it to his very best level he could.
Gotcha.
You know, we made a lot of. I mean, like I say, I'm sure he lost a lot of merchandise money. You know, we made a lot of money doing it.
So watching your son wrestling in NXT, is that more stressful than taking a chair shot?
Yeah, yeah. Because you know it was the same. It's no different. You know, we got two girls and two boys. It was, you know, watching them, the girls play basketball or softball, or, you know, you're just hanging on, just please, you know, not for you, but, you know, for them. You want it to work out for them. You want him to hit that spot, you know, because what it'll do for his career and his,
Right.
it's, yeah. You know what was the most stressful thing I ever did with it, even more than pro wrestling? They were both tremendous. And my other son, Zach Buchanan, he's actually working up in the Chicago area, Indiana now. Yeah, he's doing a lot of shows up there. But the most stressful thing I ever did with either one of them was amateur wrestling. They were both excellent amateur. Ben was actually a state champion in Alabama. Zach was a several-time state qualifier. Got his hip knocked out of joint in I think his junior year, and he was on a roll. I think he might have had a chance to win it that year, and then his senior year he came up just a little short. But they were both excellent amateur wrestlers. But I really, there was times watching them because you know, in pro wrestling, I kind of know what's going to happen, or I got an idea, or at least how it's supposed to happen. You know, with this, it's totally, you know, you got no idea. So I mean, there was times I thought I was going to have to go to the ER because I was having a heart attack. And it was really seriously, you know, my chest would get to hurt. You know, I said, "Oh God, please," you know, but like I said, not because of you know what it means for me, but because I know what it means to them, how much hard work they put in. But yeah, the most stressful thing I ever did was watching amateur wrestling.
Nice.
Yeah. The great thing, and we didn't even have an amateur wrestling program when I was in school. We did right there toward the end, but you know, I'm a huge amateur wrestling advocate because it teaches those kids a kind of discipline that you just can't get anywhere else. Because you got to put your nose to the grindstone to be successful at that, because you don't have anybody else to fall back on. You can't blame it on the coach. You can't blame it on your teammates because you're the only one. So if you lose, it's on you.
Absolutely. So in Japan, who was your toughest opponent?
You know, toughest, but actually probably one I enjoyed working the most. It was a man. Unfortunately, he's paralyzed from the neck down. Takayama. A lot of people will know him from. There's a clip that I'm sure everybody has seen. Don Fry. You know, one of the original UFC, Don Fry, and he is about a 6'6" Japanese guy with blonde hair. And for 2 minutes, they just hockey punched each other in the face. It's a clip. I mean, you can look it up. But you know, he was one of the few Japanese guys that was. I mean, he was my size, if not even a little bigger. Him, Kobashi, of course. You know, the strong style guys. I mean, you had to gear up. I mean, guys, they brought it. You know, if you didn't bring it back, they'd eat you up. So me and D'Lo, we went over there together. We had our runs. You know, we met in Smoky Mountain, had our runs in WWE at the same time, and then went over to Japan, and we were a tag team the whole time over there. So we already, you know, we got on the phone and went over there. You know, and D was like, "Hey man, you know they're gonna try. You know, just see what they're about." And I said, "Oh yeah." Awesome. So right off the plane, you know, first match, I can't remember who it was, but I just remember that first live, me and D'Lo started firing back, and it wasn't long after that, you know, them live rounds started working. But yeah,
Right.
Takayama, Kobashi,
Kabashi,
Kensuke Sasaki.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah. Worked him a bunch. Worked him in All Japan, and then me and D'Lo went to Noah, and then he was a freelancer at the time.
Right.
So we got to work him a bunch over there, and his young boy, Nakajima.
Nakajima, yeah.
Young boy, he was like 15 or 16 then. He's probably in his late 30s, but he's still over. But he was, yeah. Those they brought it, but they expected it back. So
absolutely,
there was never any apologies or anything like that.
Right. So my last question of the night, and I feel like I need to end it on this. Okay.
Okay.
First of all, 2 questions I have to ask you. Do you do conventions like Cauliflower Alley Club, Fan Fest, etc.?
Yes. Matter of fact, I just did the gathering a couple of weeks ago up in Charlotte. Me and Eric Sims, No BS with ESS. Eric Sims is we're doing a thing. It's the Bull Buchanan experience. We do I do Recon from Truth Commission, Bull Buchanan, Boss, SWAT gear, Bull Buchanan RTC, and then B Squared. So I was running as I felt like Clark Kent, Superman running in the damn phone booth all day changing outfits. I'd run in the bathroom, change into another outfit, come back up and, sign autographs for people, and then go change into the next one.
Nice.
So we're doing that. I think we're at the big event up in New York in maybe November 14th. But yeah, I've done them through the years, but I've never really done a lot of them. And I'm starting to do a little more now because it's fun. You get to meet a lot of the fans, and you get to see a bunch of your buddies that you ain't. We all live in all different parts of the world.
Right.
So,
yep. I'll be in May 15th, I think, of 2027. Herb Simmons, who runs SICW in St. Louis, he has Fan Fest, and I'll be at Fan Fest 5 this coming year. So maybe I'll see you. Maybe I'll see you.
Yeah.
So here's my last question.
Sure.
In prior podcasts or interviews, you revealed that Brock Lesnar actually went to Vince McMahon to pitch keeping you on the roster at the breakup.
Yep.
To get a push or a rub, as the wrestler could call it, from guys in the business. How surprised were you when you found out Brock Lesnar went to bat for you?
Brock was still very early on in his career, but I knew what they were looking for from him. I knew he was going to be he was already figured in to be a top guy. So, he already had some stroke there. But something I didn't mention, and I feel bad that I didn't, but I've actually never, that was the first time I've ever told anybody on a podcast or anything like that. But I actually have to mention too, and I feel bad that I didn't own that one, but I'll say it here first. There was somebody else that went to bat for me was Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy, we'd work. Me and Matt and Jeff met each other probably in 1994 up in Silver, North Carolina, and started working, working a little bit up there. And then they came over to Smoky Mountain and actually, believe it or not, did a squash match for me. Made me look like a $1 million killer. And then we so we had a little bit of a history together. But Matt caught me too. He said, "Hey man, listen, I don't know what it's worth, but I went to Vince and I said, hey man, if you ain't, if you're breaking him and Cena up, if you think about it, Matt Hardy at the time had, I guess him and Jeff had broken up, and Matt was doing the version 1 or whatever it was."
Right.
And Shannon Moore was with him, and Matt came and said, "Hey, I went to him and pitched an idea. Shannon Moore was, I think he was the original. What was the original MFer or?
Yeah,
I think so.
You know what I'm talking about? The gimmick that Matt was doing at the time.
Mattitude follower. That's what it was.
Yes, Mattitude follower. Well, so Shannon was the original Mattitude follower. He said, I pitched him the idea of you being one big MFer. So I said, hey, sounds great. But yeah, Matt Hardy did too, man.
Yeah.
It makes you feel good, especially, irregardless of what you did in the business or how big you got or how big you didn't get or what you won or how much you made. That guys, especially guys at that level, have that much respect for you. That means a ton. So yeah, Brock, that was two of the guys that that day when I think I had kind of had a feeling the writing was on the wall, and maybe I'd been there a while. I'd been there 8 years at the time, and things were changing. So, but yeah, they both went and spoke for me. So yeah,
That's awesome.
Brock Lesnar and Matt. Brock was just like, we had a lot in common, even though we grew up different parts of we were both country boys, and I guess that transcends a lot. And Matt Hardy, he's from North Carolina. We literally grew up in the business together, so that meant a lot.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, Bo Buchanan.
Sure.
Huge Pop Entertainment fans, thank you for hanging out with us for the last hour and a half. I'm going to close the show, Bull, and please do not go anywhere. I'd like to talk to you when it's off live. But Bill, thank you for hanging out. I know you got to go pick up your dad. This is Huge Pop Entertainment. We're back. We took a break for a little bit to deal with some family issues, but thank you guys for coming on. We had like 10 people watching at one time.
Wow.
Again, this has been Drop the Mic with Bull Buchanan. He told you, like I said, he talked about Monday Night Wars. He talked about his son. He talked about being a dad, how proud he is of his kids being in the business. Thank you again, Huge Pop Entertainment. I love you guys. We love you guys. Thank you for the support. Check out the website at www.hugepopent.com. Thank you for checking out. Check out Bill Buchanan on his Facebook page.
Yep.
Make sure you check out his Facebook page all the time to see where he's going to be next. Where can they buy your merch?
Bullpen Pro Wrestling. You can look there, and we got some stuff on there. That's about it right now. We're
all right.
Getting geared up again.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for an awesome night, Bull Buchanan. I loved all the stories about that you told, and I'll definitely clip that for Jim Cornette to see.
Yeah.
Thank you again, guys. We love you, and Huge Pop Entertainment is out.